the VCA Voice podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Marie Kerl. Our goal with the VCA Voice is to showcase how VCA Animal Hospitals is taking care of the future of veterinary medicine. We'll bring our purpose to life through meaningful conversations about care, our culture, and the communities we serve. On today's episode, we're chatting with Dr. Timbrala Marshall about diversity, equity, and inclusion in veterinary medicine. Listen in. Hello, Timbrala. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Dr. Kerl. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
And I'm probably going to revert to calling you Timbrala, so please just call me Marie. It's perfectly fine.
That sounds great.
So I'd like to get started a little bit to know about your journey through veterinary medicine and how you got started and your journey with the VCA and what you're doing now.
Absolutely. I'm going to try to summarize it, but my journey started pretty early, well before I actually entered the profession. I was 8 years old, and my uncle asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I told him a veterinarian, and it began there. Once my parents heard that, they were always supportive of me being a veterinarian, but they didn't know anything about what it would take for me to become a vet, obviously. And so throughout my life, I've had individuals who stepped in and offered support. One of the first was a local veterinarian that opened her doors to a junior high kid that was myself and allowed me to come and come into her hospital and learn about the profession. And she was very open and honest with my parents and told them this is going to be a journey. It's not easy to become a veterinarian. It's extremely expensive. She had these conversations with them when I was in junior high, but it was important for them to know that because they knew I was very committed to this. So they began planning to help me along the way. So I'm very appreciative of that. I don't take that for granted because I know everyone doesn't have that type of support. And it continued when I went into college. You know, I was very focused because I knew it took grades. You had to have good grades to get into vet school. That was something I had always learned. So I was very focused in college and tried my best to secure opportunities to give me exposure to the profession. And I remember there was a internship, and it was hosted by Pfizer Animal Health. So this is when I was an undergrad. It was specific for diverse candidates. So this was back in maybe 2000, 2004. But I remember saying, this would be great for me. This would give me an opportunity because it included a scholarship. And, you know, Marie, like my parents worked really hard, but they couldn't afford to send me to college and to vet school. So I had student loans and things of that nature, like so many do. And I knew a scholarship would help give me another access or open another door for me to enter. And I was very fortunate to be a part of that program. It allowed me to meet other veterinarians. It allowed me to see other sides of veterinary medicine. I had only seen a vet hospital up until this point. And now I was doing an internship in New York in a pharmaceutical company. So I said, so vets do this too. So it was opening my eyes at a very early age of the things that we could do in this profession, which made me love it even more. And when I entered vet school, I remember being so excited. I finally made it. All these years since an 8-year-old kid saying I wanted to be a vet. And I finally got in. I went to Michigan State College of Veterinary Medicine. And for undergrad, actually, I went to Tuskegee University. But when I got to Michigan State, Marie, I remember looking around and I was, you know, seeing my classmates for the first time. And I didn't see anyone else that looked like me. And that was something that stood out to me because I told you I went to Tuskegee. I'd been a part of this like little diversity internship. So this was the first time that I was in a room as the only Black person there. And this was the beginning of vet school. So now this was a different perspective of the profession that, again, I was learning all these different areas of our profession. Now I said, oh, wow. So is this normal? Is there not much diversity? And that opened my eyes to something different that in an instant, it kind of transformed my way of thinking. I was very interested in getting to know my classmates, but I also wanted them to know me. And I wanted them to understand who I was and learn more about each other. So my sophomore year in vet school, I started a chapter of a diversity club. Wow. And look at me now. You know, I was like two passions merging at this young age, loving and learning about, you know, becoming a vet, but also learning about diversity and inclusion before DEI existed, or at least before I knew what it was. And it transformed my life. And I immediately found a calling and a purpose. And I continued with both paths on through vet school and on through like my desire to see more diversity in the profession. And I entered into practice as a small animal general practice in a general practice in Marietta, Georgia. Mm-hmm. And that hospital was acquired by VCA. And here comes my VCA journey.
Excellent. As many people's VCA journeys started. So tell me about that.
So, it was an interesting process. I remember when I started there, it was a very busy practice. And I was surrounded by these amazing doctors who had been there for a decade or more. So many of them learning so much. And then we learned, as the acquisition was taking place and I was starting to see the VCA side of our now new owned business and started to meet people outside of the hospital. Mm-hmm. So before, my world was just completely those that were in this hospital. And now there were these regional leaders and they were coming in and they were talking to us. And I was seeing the bigger business side of our practice and of our profession. And I met an individual who was a regional leader at the time, introduced himself as Todd Lavender. And I said, well, so he was a veterinarian and he was very, very eager to help us transition into VCA, but he also wanted to help us, with any concerns or any issues we may have going through that process with our clients, with our team. And he was very supportive. And I remember feeling like, wow, it's really nice to have a network outside of the hospital that extends beyond that. And it's also really great to see that there's other practices that are a part of this company. From there on, I really enjoyed what VCA had to offer. And my journey with VCA continues.
So once your hospital was acquired and you met Dr. Lavender and the greater world outside of your hospital with VCA, what happened to your journey then?
I was an associate doctor at the time. And I remember there was an opportunity for a medical director role in my hospital. And I had always had an interest in being a more of a leader in the practice. I wanted to help with my team. I wanted to be a go-to person with our clients. I definitely had a desire and an ambition, and I expressed it very early on. And after a few years, I was promoted to medical director of that hospital team. And I shared with you early on, another passion I realized in vet school was that diversity piece. Mm-hmm. So I started talking to the hospital manager at the time and said, I really want to work with students. This was something that was done for me when I was a young 12-year-old, 13-year-old, and I want to try my best to give back in that same way. And so we found some young people that were in high school that were going through a program that would help them graduate. It was a part of their curriculum, and they would shadow people in the industry that they were interested in being a part of. And there were a number of them that wanted to come into veterinary medicine. And so we partnered with that high school to allow these students just for shadowing days, just be for a few hours where they would come in and watch me. And it was so important for me personally. I mean, you're busy. And I remember being slammed with appointments and stressful days. And then that young person would walk through the door with this smile on their face, and they're just so excited to be there. And it would energize our whole team. Everyone would just become really happy to start talking to them and telling them what was going on. And it was just seeing that happen. I said, this is why giving back is so important, because we're drained here. But something about seeing that little, 14, 15-year-old, and usually they were actually older. So most of these students were juniors and seniors. Mm-hmm. But something about seeing them really gave us that purpose to really keep pushing, because we knew they were the future. And in 2020, when we were in the midst of COVID, mm-hmm. and our hospital team was like so many others, just trying to hang in there together. A lot was happening in the world, and it made it so much more important that we really created a safe space for our team so that they were protected, their mental health, their anything that was special about, them. I wanted them to be able to bring that in and not have to turn that off, because there was enough going on in the world. And then And then shortly after, I learned that we were going to start stepping into inclusion and diversity at VCA. And I was honored to be asked to be a part of that journey. And now I saw another evolution of my journey at VCA when I was offered to become the Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity. And I stepped into that role in 2021.
And we're very lucky that that happened. Every time I talk to you, you just bring a smile to my face, and I feel really excited and hopeful for the future. Do you know any of the students that you've worked with, or do you keep in touch with them? And where are they in their career progression?
Absolutely, I do. So since I started this with them, when I was a young vet,
and you still are a young vet.
Thank you, Marie. But it's so funny now because I just saw one of them this summer, actually. She is a sophomore or going into her second year at UGA College of Veterinary Medicine.
Oh, wonderful.
So she stayed the course and she actually did a summer job at one of our hospitals at VCA. So she's stuck in there. So I'm going to keep pulling her along to bring her in. I saw another one of my previous students at VMX as now a veterinarian now out in practice. And that was really inspiring. And I remember when I bumped into her, just having that moment, just remembering her as a young student getting ready to go to college. And now look at you, you're a veterinarian too. You're my colleague. So it really just made me even more motivated. So yes, I have a few that are even younger that are still in school that we just did a shadowing day for a small group of students. And one of them, she's a senior in high school. She started shadowing with me when she was a middle schooler. And now she's a senior in high school getting ready to go to college. So it's really cool to see them still on this journey and to see some that have actually made it into the profession.
Oh, that's really inspiring, being, having evidence and being that role model for people and watching them grow and progress. That's actually been one of my favorite parts of being in veterinary medicine and in my career training and teaching and watching young veterinarians, starting and undergraduate students grow and develop. And I'm really happy that your students are being successful and that you're keeping in touch with them. I want to talk a little bit about diversity in veterinary medicine and kind of where did we start? I mean, you cited that you've been involved in the diversity space in veterinary medicine since you were a student. And how are things changing over time? And is it changing fast enough? And why is it so important that we embrace diversity in our profession?
I think that's a great question. And honestly, I look at the world, like honestly, and this was something I was always, my father he's a military man. He was in the Air Force. He's in Vietnam. And my father traveled a lot all over the world. And he would share stories with us when we were children. And I just remember being so intrigued by all these different countries he had visited and all these different people and learning how different people can influence different cultures and how so much of that coming together can really just change you as a person and open your eyes. Mm-hmm. And this world is just full of diversity. It's just, that's what makes it just a beautiful place to be in. We're not all the same and we shouldn't be. And we shouldn't think the same and look the same. That's no fun. It's a lot of fun. And just the variation in humans, who we are as humans. And I remember as a student, we used to celebrate the fact that we would joke around, real doctors treat more than one species. Everyone knows that. We had it on our T-shirts and everything. It would joke, but it was really cool though, because like how amazing is it to learn all these different species and to learn what makes all of them so unique, but also what brings them all together. And I applied that to life. Like it's the same for human beings and for human nature, but so often we get clouded by just other things outside of just the innocence of it all, is that we're just all trying to survive and make it. And we just have different ways of thinking. And so I believe that just like any profession, you should embrace that difference. And I feel that in the veterinary profession, it probably has been something that we haven't talked about. It's something that I think we're so focused on what we're doing in the taking care of our patients. That is our purpose. We're very very patient-driven people. Will do anything, sacrifice our own health to make sure that our patients are okay. And quite often, this just isn't a discussion that we have. But we realize now, and I realized it pretty early on as a student, that what I was seeing around me wasn't reflective of the world. And when clients would come in, it wasn't that the clients looked the same. They were all very unique, different, spoke different languages. And sometimes I felt that there was a barrier there because we didn't offer that same type of diversity within our practices. And I just wanted to see more people who I know are interested in being a part of this believe that they can. And sometimes when that young student doesn't see anyone that looks like them or doesn't hear anyone that speaks like them, they think this isn't a space where they belong. And I want to see that change because everyone belongs here. This is the best profession in the world. There's nothing else I would do. I tell people I'm very fortunate to love what I do each and every day. I do not take that for granted because a large subset of our population does not say that they're happy every single day when they go to work. And I am. So why wouldn't more people want to be a part of this and get to experience that? So I believe it's critical, not just today, but it has been, Marie, for years. This has been important. But now I think it's time that those of us that are actually in a space where we can change it, that we actually make sure those doors are open for everyone.
Tell me a little bit about with your current position, how, I know that you're taking the world by storm and there's lots and lots of things that are going on, but give me some ways that we're affecting meaningful change that will positively impact the future in VCA and taking care of the future of veterinary medicine.
Absolutely. And, when I looked at this, when I stepped into this role, I realized very quickly that there was a lot of work to be done. I mean, it was overwhelming. And I said, how can I do this? And honestly, how long will it take to do this? Like, this is all that I'm thinking my first day on the job, because that's just who we are. So I'm overanalyzing. And I immediately started to say, there are three things that are going to be critical. And if I can at least tackle one thing within those three things that's going to be impactful in this first year, I will feel like, we're at least making progress. And I always break it down into these three categories. So I said, the first thing we have to do, this is going to be important, is take care of our people. That was my priority in the hospital. My team had to be okay. If my team wasn't okay, how can we help clients? And how can we help each other? So in the morning, we have to start with a huddle and talk to each other and make sure everyone's in a good space. And I looked at this the same way. How do we take care of our people? So the very first thing we focused on was creating diversity resource groups and trying to create spaces where we could connect associates from all different types of cultures and backgrounds, genders, everything, and start bringing them together in a common, safe space where you can talk about things, whether we agree with each other or disagree. We're able to have constructive conversations and not just in an isolated vacuum. These conversations can be shared with our leaders who can then hear the voices of our people. And that's going to be impactful when we're making decisions that are for the business, decisions that directly will impact them. We should want to hear what they think. And so those resource groups were the first priority. We launched them in October of 2021. So we're not quite a year even out, and the groups are doing amazing things. And so we have our Pride group, our Black African American group, which is named Ambition, our women's group, which is named WISE, Women Impacting Success for Everyone, and our Latinx group, which is Latinx Stronger Together. And we're actually in the process of developing an AAPI group, Asian American Pacific Islander group, that'll be launching this fall. So that was that first focus area. The next was equipping our people with information. We are learners. This is where, when you're in this profession, you constantly are learning. This is what we do. And we're in the medical profession. You have to keep learning as things are evolving. And this is no different. So we needed to provide resources to educate and inform our associates. So we're starting to create those resources, working very closely with the diversity resource groups, but also with our knowledge and learning team and others within Mars to provide resources. Our Pride group just helped to launch a new type of resource that'll be beneficial to our associates that are going through gender affirmation. And it gives you definitions for different things and pronouns and all these different things that our associates want to know about that may not have had exposure to. Now we're providing that. So giving that type of curriculum is going to be very important to understanding and embedding this in our culture. The third part is for the future, because we aren't going to be here forever. As much as I would love to stay here, at some point I am going to retire, and I want the future to be bright. And I want to make sure that those students that are very interested in being a part of this have every opportunity provided to them. So we're doing pilots for student shadowing. We're trying to create more opportunities through summer camps, through programs like Vet Set Go. Like, we're really just starting with the student piece, but that, I believe, is going to be a very meaningful and impactful way to change the profession for the long term. So that's just the beginning. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But those are the three things that we're working on right now. And we need help. We need everybody to be a part of this. So even talking to you about this today, Marie, for those that are listening and are interested, I am just wanting more to join in this journey so that we can do this together as VCA.
You mentioned Vet Set Go. In case we have people listening who don't know what that is, tell me a little bit more about that and about some of the other student programs that are happening, and what ages are we looking at, and why is that important?
Absolutely. So Vet Set Go, for those that don't know, it's a group that was created and actually by a veterinarian, Dr. Christopher Carpenter, created this organization many years ago, well over a decade ago. And his focus was to create opportunities for young students. And when I say young, we're talking 12 to 14 and 15-year-olds, young students who were interested in the veterinary profession. And so what he did was he partnered with Auburn University, who offers a summer camp for students to attend. And they go to Auburn and they're on campus. So they're really like living this vet school life. They're staying on campus and they're learning about anatomy and learning about different species and about husbandry. And they're out, with the equine and everything. So they're really getting a very broad introduction into the profession. And Dr. Carpenter on his own began giving scholarships to students to attend the camps. He also wrote a few books, also created a website, which gave students different areas where they could go in their cities to learn more about being a vet or to volunteer at different veterinary related facilities. So when we saw this, Dr. Lavender actually was very intrigued by what Dr. Carpenter was doing in just such a small way. And we said, how impactful would this be if we joined with Vet Set Go and helped to expand this into something that could impact students across the nation, not just in one area, but just expanded across the United States. And so we joined with Vet Set Go in a partnership, and we've been working with them this year. We started with continuing the scholarship at Auburn, and we're talking to them about what the future will look like, including how we might be able to increase into more students being able to go to camp throughout the nation. So it's very exciting. This is important because at a very young age, when students are deciding what they want to be, quite often, if they have access and if they're able to experience it, firsthand, that could really inspire them to continue along this path, even if that path is difficult, like going to vet school or even vet tech school. So if we capture students at this age and we really invest in them in a very intentional way, we can help ensure that these students continue down this path. And this will be the future of our profession. So that's why we're doing this. That's why it matters. The shadowing program I spoke of is for high school students. And the reason that's so important is because allowing those students to walk into a hospital, even if it's for a few hours, allowing them to meet doctors that look like them and to see doctors from all different backgrounds, that's going to be inspiring for those students as they're preparing to go to college. And we hope that we can give them some type of reassurance that they too can do this.
Well, I'm really proud of the work that you're doing as well, and really appreciate Dr. Lavender's vision with starting the position. And obviously, he recognized talent when he first met you in your hospital.
Thank you.
I also want to touch on access to care and how can we expose more families and young people in areas where they may not have good access to care in a way to increase the experiences that students have, and then therefore hopefully they're seeing themselves in those positions.
VCA is unique because we have so many hospitals in so many communities, and we continue to grow. This is what makes us really special. One thing that we can do is actually look into the communities and pay attention to the communities that our hospitals are in. I mean, we acquire hospitals, and most of the hospitals have been in those neighborhoods for years. That was the case with my practice. And you have those clients that are coming in, they've been coming for years with their families. I can't name how many of my clients I watch grow families and get more pets. And, we went through this for my entire time there. And I had to think that if these are the people in the community, that's our direct line to the community, it has to be more than just transactional. It can't just be an in and out. We are playing a huge part in their life, especially in a general practice where you're seeing the same people over and over. It might be a little different for emergency and specialty, but still you're seeing clients that are in these communities that rely on you, and their pets mean everything to them. They're their family. And so if we actually step away from just that business side, and we look at it from a medical and also a cultural perspective. So I try to take equity, inclusion, and diversity out of just like, okay, this is something that we're doing. It's the right thing to do. But this is also important because if there are barriers preventing our families, who now we know a large subset of our population have pets, if we're preventing them from understanding the importance of taking care of their pets because we don't connect culturally, or we don't have that communication that's clear. So if we don't have that, then in essence, not only are we preventing us from continuing to expand into the rest of the expand our hospitals into the rest of the country, but also we might be preventing health problems from being treated.
I love your emphasis on the health aspects, both for animal health, which is incredibly important, but also for human health, and that intersection of if we're not seeing clients, we can't educate them, we can't help their pets, we can't help them to understand how to maintain great health and keep pets safely and happily for their life. We only have a few minutes left, and I really want to know if there are associates listening to this, or even clients listening to this recording, if they are passionate and want to help and want to get involved, how can they do that?
So, I love the fact that we are so open and we are more than willing to bring more in. That's the beauty of this. I think that was important for me even when I stepped into this role. I said, I have to connect with everyone. So I started reaching out immediately. And I've tried to make myself very easily accessible so that if anyone has a question, they can email me directly. They can call me, and we can talk about this and tell you how you too can play a part in this. It might be as simple as joining me on, I speak to vet students across the country just on virtual platforms to talk to them. And some of them, they want to hear from other people in the profession and not just vets. So that's another thing is like I share with them, with VCA, you could be interested in finance. You can be interested in IT. You can be interested in being in a hospital. It's like, this is a company that has so many opportunities for so many students. I talked to my nephew about it, who's very interested in public relations. I said, we have a whole corporate affairs department. You can learn so much. Like there is a ton of opportunities that we have to offer that many companies don't. And I love that about us. And so for those who might be interested in not only just learning more, but sharing and being a part of this journey, you can reach out to me directly. You can email me at timbrala.marshall@vca.com. You can call us, of course, but I'm very easy to find. So if you just ask, someone will redirect you to me. And I'd love to talk to you about what we're doing in the community service, as well as what we're doing in the business for those who work for our company. And I would love more than anything to have you as a part of this journey.
Oh, that's wonderful advice. Thank you so much for that. And my final question in closing, for someone who is just getting started in the profession, and they're either they're exploring or they're just getting started, they're starting vet school, they're starting their first job, give me some words of advice for those people getting started.
This is something that I think my parents shared with me, and it has made a huge impact on me. But when you're just starting out, or even for some who might be starting something new, because, our journeys just keep changing, give yourself grace and allow yourself time. My father, I talk about him a lot, but he's a pastor. He's influenced me in so many ways, as has my mother. But I often was a young person who was very hard on myself, and I wanted to achieve. I wanted to have the best grades. I wanted to be the best softball player. I played softball through college. And my dad would say, Timbrala, you have to stop taking life this seriously, and you have to give yourself some grace. And it really occurred to me as I entered into our profession, which can be so taxing and it's so hard because we can't fix everything. And I would go home at night knowing that I didn't have the answer to a case. I couldn't figure out how to help a patient. And I would take that with me internally, like so many of us do. So I know some of us are listening and you do this every day. And it would cause me to really embed all of this into my own self. And I was bringing it home to my family instead of just allowing myself the grace of being a human being. I'm not perfect. Once you take a step back and you realize that you don't know everything, you're still figuring it out each and every day, no matter how long you've been in this profession or in your career, and you're not going to do everything perfectly. And you take and say, it's okay. I'm okay with that. Others will also be. You'll learn. Most people don't really care as much as you do. And they're fine because they understand you're not human. We put those expectations on ourselves. Take a step back, and that will not only allow you to breathe, but I think it'll be much better for us from a mental health space, so that we allow ourselves just to be humans. So take your time. It's a marathon. What is the saying, Marie? It's a marathon
it's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
Thank
I think
you.
it is.
It's the truth, though. So take your time and pace yourself. Allow yourself to grow, and I think you'll appreciate that in the long run.
Oh, amazing, amazing advice. And Timbrala, thank you so much. I'm really grateful that you're with us and your passion that you bring to diversity, equity, and inclusion within VCA.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for everything that you do. You are my inspiration. I just want you to know that. As our Chief Medical Officer, I look up to you, and I am just so proud of what we're doing together. So thank you for partnering with me from day one, and for always making sure that I had a voice. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to leave a review to let us know your thoughts, and share the episode with friends. Follow VCA Animal Hospitals on social media at LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. For more inspiring stories, visit our website at vcavoice.com.